I am Cornelius Pruitt, 71 years old. My living son Devlin called me today while I was standing at my other son's grave. He demanded I sign the papers for a reverse mortgage on the house I built with my own two hands. I told him no. He hung up on me. But that wasn't the call that left me speechless. It was the next one, the one that came 30 seconds later. A call from a number I haven't seen light up a screen in 15 years. The number belonging to Marcus, the son I buried. He whispered, "Dad, don't trust Devlin." The air at Forest Park Cemetery is always thick. That heavy, humid Houston air that clings to your skin and makes your shirt press flat against your back. I've been coming out here every Sunday for the past year, ever since I buried Harriet. Her headstone is smooth, polished gray granite. Harriet Pruitt, beloved wife and mother. We will see you in the morning. I ran my thumb along the carved letters. Harriet was my rock my 45 years. Beside her stands the older stone, the one worn down by 15 years of Texas rain and pollen. Welcome to Honor Revenge Stories. I'm glad you found your way here today. If stories like this one speak to you, tap subscribe, so the next one reaches you without you having to go looking for it. Before we go any further, I'd love to know what is it you're hoping to carry with you when this story is done. Drop it in the comments. It helps me understand what matters most to the people sitting with me. Now, a quick word before we begin. Some details in this story have been shaped for the telling, and any resemblance to specific real persons or events is purely coincidental. But the truth at the heart of it, the betrayal, the survival, the reckoning, that part is as real as it gets. Marcus Pruitt, beloved son, gone too soon, my firstborn, my legacy. I despise this cemetery, yet it's the one place where I still feel them near me. The quiet here tells the truth something. The quiet in my house stopped doing a long time ago. My knees ached under the weight of me. 71 years, does that grind you down, joint by joint? And it shows up in other ways too, in how people stop registering you as a person and start registering you as an inconvenience, a liability, an estate waiting to be carved up. That's when the buzzing started deep in my coat pocket. Intrusive. Wrong for this place. It came again harder this time. I already knew. Devlin, my only living son. I let my eyes rest on Marcus's name cut into the stone. You always were the steady one, I thought. The one who knew what mattered. I pulled the phone out and answered. The screen glare stung my eyes. "I'm here, Devlin. You still at the cemetery tight, clipped. 40 years old, and he still carries that edge like a boy who got told no and never forgave it. Devlin took Lacey as his wife 10 years ago. She's a hard woman, pale and calculating, out of River Oaks, who regards my old neighborhood the way you'd regard mud on your shoe. She's the architect of these new appetites in him. Before Lacey came along, Devlin was simply adrift. After her, he developed a different kind of hunger. Yes, son, it's Sunday. I'm here with your mother and your brother." He exhaled into the receiver, long, self-pitying. "Look, Dad, I know this is hard, but we need you to focus. Lacey and I need you to focus. Have you gone through those reverse mortgage papers yet? Focus, as though I'm a child falling behind in class. I went through them, Devlin. I stood there staring at Harriet's name. I'm not putting my name on them. Dead air on the line, thick with static. Behind it, I could make out Lacey in the background. She wasn't making any effort to keep her voice down. That was intentional. Is he refusing? Tell him that's not an option. It isn't safe." Devlin came back on stiff and mechanical, every word something she'd fed him. "Dad, you don't understand. This is a great deal. Houston's market is strong right now. You're holding $500,000 in equity and doing nothing with it. You could be comfortable. Comfortable. The house I put up with Harriet back in 1977, a solid 3-bedroom stone house over in Sunnyside, has been paid off for years. That neighborhood was something then. Our something. I draw my pension from the post office. I have Harriet's life insurance. I want for nothing. I don't need the money, Devlin. I love my house. It's not about the money, Dad." His voice cracked up toward a shout. "It's about keeping you safe. The streets changed. That house is too much for one man. Those stairs are an accident. What if something happens to you, Lacey and I? We're scared for you. There's a new senior community in Midtown, high-end everything on site, swimming pool, medical staff around the clock. I don't need medical staff, Devlin. I need my own walls around me, the walls I put up myself. It's not a home anymore, Dad. It's an anchor dragging you down. You're alone in there going in circles, memories slipping. You let the water bill lapse last month. He had me there, except the reason it lapsed was because he'd taken over my accounts 3 months prior, swept all the paperwork off my desk, said he was moving it online, making things simpler for me. Now I think he deliberately left that bill unpaid, laying groundwork, building a paper trail to make me look senile. Devlin, I am not signing anything. That house belongs to me. It belonged to your mother. It was Marcus's home, too. It is not going on the market, my voice held this time. No hedging, no maybes, no asking for another week to consider. Just no. Silence on the line growing. Then Lacey's voice no longer bothering to whisper at all. This is ridiculous. The man is incompetent. We move ahead with the power of attorney. Ask him. Go ahead and ask him if that's what he wants. Devlin returned and all pretense had burned off. Dad, your judgment is compromised. If the easy road isn't acceptable to you, we'll take the other one for your own protection. Is that a threat, son? Call it a promise, Dad? We're doing this out of love. No, you're not, I said, and my voice had dropped to something low and unsteady. You want the deed. You want what's underneath it. You've been angling for it since the week Harriet passed. Another sharp word from Lacey in the background. End the call. Hang up now. We move to plan B, Dad, Devlin said, all feeling gone from his voice. You're running out of time. Quit being difficult. He hung up, gone. Just the vast pressing silence of the cemetery rushing back in. You're running out of time? I sat with those words. He wasn't talking about my years left on this earth. He meant my days inside that house. My life as a man who answers to nobody. I lowered myself onto the bench beside Harriet's grave, and the ache in my knees didn't even register against the hollow cold sitting in the center of my chest. What had I done? One son, a man of real character taken before his time, the other circling like something that feeds on the dying. I pressed my hands over my face. The grief I always carried for Harriet and Marcus had new company. Now something uglier, a betrayal with edges on it. Tears threatened at the back of my eyes. And right then, still gripping the phone, it rang again. I expected Devlin calling back to soften the blow or to sharpen it, but the number on the screen wasn't his. It was one I hadn't laid eyes on in 15 years. Everything in me stopped. My lungs forgot what they were for. Somewhere in my old contacts, never deleted the name still attached to those digits, was Marcus Pruitt. A malfunction. A sick coincidence. Somebody's idea of a joke. I nearly let it go, but my thumb trembling found the green button. I lifted the phone. Hello, I breathed, static, wind moving across the receiver. Hello, Marcus. Then a voice, thin, rasping. A voice I would know in a burning building underwater in the dark. Dad, Marcus, God Almighty. Marcus, is that you, Dad? I don't have much time. My battery, he whose son, who? Dad, don't trust Devlin. The line collapsed. My hand around the phone wouldn't stop shaking. Not age, not cold. Something else, a white-hot fury rising up from the ground. Devlin, my son. My living, breathing only son had just delivered me a threat while standing in his air-conditioned River Oaks house with Lacey mapping out Plan B. And I had been standing in the crushing Houston heat next to the woman they both should have been mourning. I looked at Harriet's name, pressed into the polished gray granite. Harriet. Where did we go wrong? Where did I... The grief had curdled. What I'd felt minutes before was soft compared to this. This tasted like metal, like something corroded. Gutted is the only word. First Marcus 15 years back, then Harriet just last year, and now Devlin was working to finish the job, to strip me out of my own existence, fold me into some pastel room in a facility where a nurse counts out your pills before breakfast. Over a house, over the number on an equity statement. I pushed the phone into my pocket where it sat like a stone. Time to go. Get back behind my own door, throw the bolt on the house Devlin coveted so badly, and figure out what came next. But the moment I turned, shoes dragging against the grass, it started again. That pulse, hard, persistent. I pulled the phone out. Devlin. I've already told you, but it wasn't Devlin's name. No name at all. A row of digits, unknown. I don't take those calls. Scammers after your social security number, or kids with too much time. I went for the red button to kick it to voicemail. My hand was shaking enough that I missed entirely. Before I could correct my aim, I went still. Something cold moved through me. Sudden, complete, deep enough to soften my knees. I stood there and let it ring. 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 On the fifth ring, something in my hand made the decision for me, pressed green. Phone at my ear. "Hello," I said, my throat rough. "Whatever you're selling, save it." Silence. But not the mechanical click of a robocall, not the distant noise of a call center floor somewhere far away. This was open, outdoors, wind, a faint sound of something rustling leaves, maybe moving near a microphone. "Hello," I said again louder. "Who is this?" Then I heard it, barely. The ghost of a sound, a rasp, like dead leaves pulled slow across dry concrete. Dad. Ice. My blood went to ice. My heart didn't stutter or stumble. It clenched, seized up like a fist closing hard and sudden inside my chest. One word. That's all it was. But I knew that word the way I knew my own heartbeat. That was how he said it when fever had him flat on his back. That was the sound he made when fear got the better of him. Dad. No. Every corner of my mind was screaming. This is a trick. Someone's playing a vicious game. Devlin? It has to be Devlin. He's trying to push me over the edge. He's trying to manufacture proof that I'm senile, the same way he described it to Lacey. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice barely holding together. "Is this you, Devlin? This is not something to joke about." The whisper came back, strained, urgent, dissolving in static. "Dad, I don't have much time. They're watching me. My lungs quit on me. The cemetery air pressed down like a physical weight. I grabbed Harriet's headstone to keep my legs under me. My knuckles went white against the granite. Marcus. I breathed the name like ash, an old memory on my tongue. "Son, is that really you?" "Don't trust Devlin." Urgent, frightened. Then the phone, the battery, and a click. Nothing. I stood there with the phone still welded to my ear. The whole world had shrunk down to the buzzing of cicadas in the trees and the hammering of blood behind my temples. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. Grief rewires a man's mind. Devlin was right about one thing. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I was so gutted by loss and by betrayal that my own head had assembled that voice out of desperation and longing. I lowered the phone from my ear, my hand shaking so violently I nearly put it in the grass. I stared at the screen. I needed to see something concrete. I needed the proof that I had come unraveled. My thumb slipped twice before I got the call log open. Most recent incoming call, 11:32 a.m. unknown caller. I stared at the digits. Just numbers. Anonymous. A prank. It had to be. Then I watched the screen do something. My phone, trying to be useful, was combing through my old contacts, cross-referencing the number that had just come through. The digits blinked out. 2 words filled the screen in their place. Words that broke something open inside me. Marcus Pruitt. I stumbled backward, one hand pressed to my chest. No. No. This was impossible. Because Marcus Pruitt had been dead for 15 years. He died on a trail at Huntsville State Park, a fall into a ravine. The police report called it an accident. The coroner said the fall was instantaneous, that he never felt it. And Devlin was the one who found him. I buried my firstborn. I remember every detail of that day, the gray sky, the rain that wouldn't let up, the smell of wet earth and gardenias drifting up from the open ground. I remember the funeral director, a man named Stroup, asking whether I wanted a final moment with Marcus before we closed the lid. Devlin, 25 years old at the time, had his hand on my shoulder. "Hey, don't, Dad," he'd said, his voice thick with what I took for grief. "Don't carry that picture with you. He's in a bad way. The fall wasn't kind to him." And I had listened. I was shattered. I could not risk my last image of Marcus being one of ruin, so the casket stayed shut. But there was one thing I did, a private ritual I needed. Marcus loved his phone, an old Nokia, one of the first that could store and play music. He was devoted to that thing. When we dressed him for burial, I made sure it went with him. His favorite suit, a silver chain I'd given him, and that phone. I placed it there myself. I can still feel the smooth, cool plastic against my palm. I slipped it into the inner pocket of his jacket while he lay in the casket. Devlin stood right at my elbow, weeping or going through the motions. I rested my hand on the polished wood of the lid. "I'll see you in the morning, son," I whispered. Then I nodded to Stroup and watched them seal it. I watched them lower Marcus into the ground, right there beside the spot where Harriet would one day rest. I threw the first fistful of dirt down myself. He went into the earth with that phone. So, how after 15 years was my dead son calling me from a device buried 6 feet underground, warning me about the brother who had stood at his graveside? My palms were slick on the steering wheel of my old, reliable Oldsmobile. I have no memory of the drive back from the cemetery. I must have rolled through every red light between there and home. The world beyond the windshield looked muffled and far away, like something glimpsed from the bottom of a lake. The only thing that felt real was the thudding in my chest and that whisper. Dad, don't trust Devlin. I turned into the driveway I have owned for 40 years, my refuge. Except it didn't feel like one anymore. It felt like the jaws of a trap. And I knew before I even got to the door that they'd be inside. I pushed it open. The house was cool, the air conditioning a steady hum. And there in my living room on Harriet's sofa sat Devlin and Lacey. They looked up together, their faces arranged into identical expressions of strained theatrical concern. The coffee table held no family photographs, just a neat, deliberate stack of glossy folders, the reverse mortgage papers. Lacey rose first, pressing the front of her expensive white trousers flat. She moved toward me quickly, that broad, manufactured smile already in place, trailing a sharp chemical perfume. "Dad, you're back," she said, her voice coated in something sticky and false. She touched my arm. I pulled away. "Oh, Cornelius, you look white as a sheet," she murmured, tilting her head just so. "You see what this big old house is doing to you? The upkeep alone, it's wringing the life out of you." She was laying the blame on mortar and timber, on the rooms where I raised my boys, on 40 years of memory pressed into these walls. She was pointing at everything except what was actually poisoning this house. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't trust what might come out. I looked past her practiced smile, past all of it, and found Devlin. He was still seated, tapping his pen in a slow rhythm against the stack of papers. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes were on the floor, jaw clenched. "Dad, did you catch what Lacey said?" His voice was flat and low. "We're worried. Just put your name on the paperwork. We can have everything arranged by end of the month." I didn't answer. I walked right past the sofa. I heard Lacey's smile go cold behind me. I heard the quick, tight sound of her breath. Dad, Devlin said, getting to his feet. "Don't walk away from me like that. We are trying to help you." I reached the office door. My hand on the brass knob was steady. I turned it, stepped through, and pulled the door shut behind me. I threw the deadbolt. The click of that lock dropping into its housing was the most satisfying sound I had heard in a long, long time. Quiet. I stood with my back pressed against the solid oak, the door Marcus helped me hang when he was 16. Through it, I could hear them in urgent, furious whispers. What is wrong with him? He's losing his grip. This just proves everything. Let them say it. In this room, the only voice that mattered was Marcus's. Don't trust Devlin. Not grief. Not a breakdown. A warning, but here was what I couldn't get past. A phone buried 6 feet down inside a sealed casket cannot be switched on. It cannot be charged. It cannot reach out to anyone. Unless, and my heart slammed against my ribs at the thought, unless it was never in that casket to begin with. I pulled up my call log. Marcus Pruitt. I had to know, not believe no. A ghost word wasn't enough. I needed something I could hold. My hands were still unsteady, but the trembling had a different quality now. It was purpose, not panic. I settled into my chair, the one Harriet always said I loved more than I loved sleep. I dug out my wallet, found the cell phone provider's bill, located the customer service number printed along the bottom. My fingers found the keys. The line connected to a cheerful recorded voice. I worked through the menu. Press 4 for billing. Press 2 for technical support. Then a real person. "Thank you for calling AT&T. My name is Tamsin. How can I help you?" I steadied my breathing and arranged my voice into something calm. Something like a composed 71-year-old man, not a man whose entire understanding of the world had just been knocked sideways. "Tamsin," I said, and I was surprised by how even it came out. "I need some help with an unusual situation. I'm the executor of my son's estate, Marcus Pruitt. He passed away 15 years ago." "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir." Thank you," I continued. "Social Security is running an audit, and they need confirmation that all his accounts were properly closed. I still have his old line attached to my family plan. It's been inactive all these years. I just need you to verify when that number was officially terminated. A clean, plausible lie. Official sounding. The kind a calm man with a legitimate reason would tell. I can absolutely look into that for you, Mr. Pruitt. Could you confirm the number you're inquiring about?" I read her the 10 digits. The same 10 digits that had called me less than an hour ago from 6 feet underground. I heard keyboard clicks on her end. "One moment, sir. I have the account here. Marcus Pruitt. Yes, I see it. Good, good," I said. "So, you can confirm it was closed out 15 years ago." Tamsin paused. The typing stopped. The silence on the line grew heavy. "Sir," she said, and her voice had shifted uncertain, almost apologetic. That's not what I'm looking at here." My stomach dropped. "What are you seeing, Tamsin?" "Well, the line was inactive for a very long time. Dormant past due since 2009, but it appears it was reactivated." "Reactivated?" "Yes, sir. 3 days ago, we received full payment on the outstanding balance, and then someone added a new prepaid balance of $75 to the account. That's what's keeping the line live right now." The cold started at the back of my neck and spread downward. Sweat broke across my forehead. "Tamsin, who made that payment?" "I'm sorry, sir. It was processed online through an anonymous prepaid gift card. There's no trace on our end, but the line is definitely active." I ended the call, didn't say goodbye. 3 days ago, someone woke Marcus's phone back up, and today, it called me. My mind went backward. 15 years. The funeral home. The smell of lilies and formaldehyde. All of it wrapped in grief so thick I could barely see through it. I remembered standing beside the casket. Devlin, 25 at the time, was right there with me. He had managed everything: the arrangements, the paperwork, the funeral director, a man named Dr. Stroup. Devlin had his arm across my shoulders. "Don't, Dad," he'd said, guiding me back from the open casket before I got too close. "Don't look. The fall, it did damage. That's not how you need to carry him." He was crying. Or he appeared to be crying. His face was in his hands. And I, his father, shattered beyond coherent thought, had taken him at his word. I trusted him. I handed over the burial of my firstborn to my surviving son and stepped back. I nodded. I let them close it. I never looked inside. I never saw Marcus's face. I never held his hand one final time. I simply slid that phone into the pocket of a suit jacket that, for all I knew, held nothing. I stared at my office door. On the other side, I could hear Lacey and Devlin going at each other in hushed, urgent tones. Upset about a house. I was somewhere else entirely. A realization settled over me, slow, cold, and crushing as a slab of stone. I had no proof my son was dead. I had only Devlin's word, nothing else. I sat in the quiet of my office for a long time, just their muffled voices leaking under the door. Lacey's tone cut through cleanest. He locked himself in. "I told you he's paranoid." And Devlin somewhere between frustrated and defensive. Just give him a minute. He's old. He's not thinking straight. Not thinking straight, paranoid, senile. Some small and frightened part of me entertained the possibility that they were right. Harriet was gone. Marcus was gone. I was alone in this oversized house. I had missed the water bill. I had lost my keys last week, and now I was sitting here convinced I had received a phone call from a man in the ground. Maybe the grief had finally caved something in. Maybe that fall last winter had shaken something loose up there. Maybe I was nothing more than a confused old man, a weight on his responsible son's shoulders, a problem dressed up as a person. Maybe signing those papers was the right call. Maybe the Midtown facility was exactly where I belonged. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. But they were the same hands that laid every brick in the fireplace in the next room. The same hands that repaired every broken toy Marcus and Devlin ever brought to me. The hands that held Harriet's as she took her last breath. These are not the hands of a weak man, not the hands of a man coming apart. And they are certainly not the hands of a poor man. I am not senile, and I am not poor. Devlin doesn't know. Lacey definitely does not know. My own son, the one scheming to pry $500,000 of equity out from under me, has no real idea who his father is. He sees this house. He sees the old Oldsmobile sitting in the driveway. He sees worn gardening clothes and a retired postal worker drawing a pension. He adds it up and gets broke old man. What he cannot see is the other Cornelius Pruitt, the one Harriet and I constructed in silence. Harriet was far sharper than the world understood. She wasn't only a nurse. She had a mind for money that would have stunned people if she'd ever let them see it. Back in the 80s, when Houston was starting to catch fire and nobody wanted to touch commercial real estate in the underdeveloped corridors, she read the future clearly. Cornelius, she'd told me, we buy land, we don't buy cars, we buy brick and block. And that is what we did. We lived off my postal salary. Every dollar she earned nursing went back into property. A small warehouse first, then another. A strip mall bleeding money that everyone else had written off. Duplexes and blocks people wouldn't drive through after dark. We kept our names buried in LLCs and holding companies. We found a quiet, capable advisor in Switzerland. Devlin and Lacey are running their scheme to steal a $500,000 house. They have no idea I am worth $15 million. We never told them. Harriet and I made that agreement early. We had watched easy money hollow people out, even people close to us. Children in our own community who came into something and ended up with nothing to show for it but a fast car and a story. We wanted our sons to earn their way, to build themselves from the ground up, not coast on what we'd stacked. Marcus understood that. My firstborn never stretched his hand out once. He earned a scholarship to Rice University. He worked every summer. He was building something of his own piece by piece. He'd come over find me patching the porch and pick up a hammer without being asked. He didn't see it as a chore. He saw it as who we were. He got it. Devlin was cut from a different cloth, always hunting for the easier road, always drawn to the surface of things. He looked at the life Harriet and I built and didn't see discipline, he saw failure. My old Oldsmobile embarrassed him. The fact that we never took European holidays like Lacey's family bothered him more than he ever admitted. He mistook our restraint for poverty. He mistook my frugality for weakness. He never grasped that real power. Real wealth is the freedom to keep it invisible, the freedom to live in your comfortable old house and not give a damn what someone like Lacey thinks of it. I had believed that keeping the money hidden was protecting him, forcing him to stand on his own. Instead, I had made something worse. A man so consumed by hunger for what he imagined I didn't have that he was willing to strip away the little he thought I did. I pushed back from the desk and stood. The trembling was gone. My hands were level. Lacey and Devlin were still murmuring beyond the door, audible, irritating, but small. They were a manageable problem, the kind that $15 million and the right attorney dissolves without much effort. No, they weren't the real thing I was wrestling with. The real thing was that call. I looked at the log again. Marcus Pruitt. This was not a haunting. Ghosts don't run on cell towers. This was not grief playing tricks. Grief doesn't log into a carrier's website and settle a past due account with an untraceable gift card. Someone is alive. Someone is out there moving through the world, using my dead son's number to send me a warning. Was it someone from Marcus's life I'd never met? Someone who'd gotten close enough to our family to know what Devlin was doing? Or, and this thought moved through me like something electric, something I hadn't let myself feel in 15 years. What if it was something more than that? I unlocked the office door. Everything in me had steadied and sharpened into a single clear purpose. Devlin would not get this house. That question was closed. But it was no longer the one that mattered most. I was going to find out who placed that call. I was going to find out who or what was actually in Marcus's grave. I grabbed my keys, crossed through the living room without a glance, and walked straight for the front door. I heard Devlin behind me. "Dad, where do you think you're going?" I heard Lacey. "You can't just walk out on this conversation." I walked out of the front door, climbed into my old, reliable Oldsmobile, and drove. I needed a lawyer. That much was clear the moment I was out of the driveway. But not the family lawyer, not Mr. Picard. Devlin had been the one who pointed me toward Picard after Harriet died. Said he'd help me get everything in order. I saw it now with a cold gut-level certainty Picard wasn't my lawyer. He belonged to Devlin. Devlin had been arranging his pieces on the board for months, maybe longer. Turning to Picard would be like handing the fox a key to the henhouse. I needed someone I could trust, someone Harriet had trusted. I turned it over in my mind, sifting through years and faces. Then it surfaced. Harriet had sat on the board of a local charity. A contractor had tried to swindle them out of thousands. Harriet had come home that evening with something lit up behind her eyes. "Cornelius," she'd said, "you should have seen this woman, Odessa Tatum. She dismantled that man on the stand without ever lifting her voice. Sharp as a tack, and she does not suffer fools, not for a single second." Odessa Tatum, a name I hadn't turned over in a decade. A formidable black attorney working out of downtown Houston. No smiling suburban partner in a glass box. A fighter. I found a payphone and felt like a man running from his own life. I looked up her firm, Tatum and Associates. I dialed. I didn't give my name. I told them I was a colleague of the late Harriet Pruitt and needed an urgent confidential consultation on a sensitive estate matter. Her assistant, all efficiency, no pleasantries, must have recognized Harriet's name. The schedule opened up. Mrs. Tatum can see you at 4 p.m. Use the back entrance on Westheimer Road. We protect our client's privacy. Her office was nothing like what I expected. Nothing like the gleaming towers where Lacey's father did his business. This was old Houston money. The building had dark walnut wainscoting, deep wool rugs that swallowed every footstep, and shelves lined with leather-bound law books that had clearly been consulted, not just collected. Odessa Tatum was in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. Her silver hair was swept back in a precise, elegant twist. Her eyes didn't simply look at you. They took inventory. She had no patience for small talk. "Mr. Pruitt," she said, directing me toward a heavy leather chair across from her broad desk. "My assistant tells me this is urgent and confidential. Tell me what's brought you here." I settled into the chair, and for the first time in memory, I was about to lay the full truth in front of a stranger, the truth I had shielded from my own son for 40 years. "Mrs. Tatum." I began, my voice carrying a slight tremor. "My son Devlin and his wife Lacey are working to have me declared incompetent." She nodded, her expression giving nothing away. "I see this pattern often, Mr. Pruitt. More often than I care to. It's called elder financial abuse. They want the property, I assume. Yes, ma'am, they want my house. They're trying to push through a reverse mortgage, and if that fails, they'll go after power of attorney and have me placed in a facility. They've been calling me senile paranoid, a burden on everyone around them. And what is the property worth, roughly?" "Approximately $500,000, I said. "A common and ugly story," she replied, already drawing a legal pad toward her. "We can pursue a restraining order. We can contest any competency proceeding. It will be a fight, but your assets can be protected." "I appreciate that, Mrs. Tatum," I said, keeping my voice even. "But that isn't the complicated part." She lifted an eyebrow and set her pen down. "They believe I'm a retired postal carrier scraping by on a pension and Social Security. They believe that house is the full extent of what I own. It isn't." I drew a slow breath. This was the moment. No, ma'am. That house is a front, a decoy. My wife and I spent decades building something quietly. My total holdings are approximately $15 million. The bulk of it is in offshore accounts and commercial properties held through LLCs. Odessa Tatum's pen went still. She looked up from the pad and studied me, those precise measuring eyes registering something for the first time. She took in my worn sports coat, my plain trousers, my old shoes, polished to the limit of what they could offer. $15 million, she said, not a question. A reckoning. "Yes, ma'am. And my son has not the slightest idea. He is trying to dismantle my life to take my home, and what he imagines is everything I have amounts to rounding error." Odessa Tatum eased back in her chair. The professional composure stayed in place, but I could see the gears turning, the picture reforming itself entirely. "Well, Mr. Pruitt, this is not what it appeared to be. This is not a simple property grab. This is a coordinated effort to commit fraud at a significant scale. That's precisely why I came," I said. "I need you to lock everything down. Build walls around it that Devlin or anyone working with him cannot breach. That portion is straightforward," she said, returning to her notes. "We restructure the trusts. We bring the LLCs under a new holding umbrella. By the time anyone comes looking, there will be nothing within reach." "But Cornelius," she used my given name now, and something in her voice eased by 1 degree. "You have to be ready for what comes next. When they discover you are not the man they imagined, it will get considerably worse. They'll be cornered. Desperate people are dangerous." "I understand that," I said. "But there's more to tell." She looked at me steadily. "More than $15 million and a plot to have you committed." "Yes. This is the part I cannot explain. This is the part that makes me question everything I know about what's real." I took out my phone. My hand wasn't steady. "This morning at the cemetery, I received a phone call." I walked her through it, the number, the name that surfaced from my contacts, the voice. "Don't trust Devlin." Her professional bearing softened by a degree. She looked at me with something that edged towards sympathy. "Cornelius, grief can distort perception in powerful ways. The stress of this situation, the threats from your son." "I understand how it sounds," I cut in perhaps too quickly. I thought the same thing myself. I nearly convinced myself I was falling apart until I called my carrier, and until I had this. I pulled up the call log, found the entry under Marcus Pruitt, and pressed play on the voicemail. The call had been brief, but the tail end, the part where it severed, had been captured. I set the phone on her desk. The office was still. Then the recording played. Wind. And then that rasping whisper dragged up from somewhere that should have been silent forever. Dad, I don't have much time. They're watching me. Don't trust Devlin. Then nothing. The recording ended. What followed was a silence that had weight to it, texture. Odessa Tatum had gone motionless. She stared at the phone on her desk as though it might move on its own. She was no longer looking at me the way an attorney looks at a client. I buried him. I said, the words scraping out of me. I placed that exact phone in the casket myself. I stood there while they sealed it. I watched them lower it into the ground. Odessa Tatum slowly pushed the legal pad aside. She set her hands flat on the desk. The sympathy had cleared from her eyes. What was there now was sharper and colder. Mr. Pruitt, she said. Her voice dropped low. The reverse mortgage, the $15 million, that's a property matter. Civil law. She pressed one finger to my phone. But this, she said, this is something else. This is not a civil matter. This is deeply, profoundly disturbing. I walked out of Odessa Tatum's building as the last light was bleeding out of the Houston sky. The city was switching on its lights. I was walking in the dark. That whisper wouldn't leave me. Don't trust Devlin. It went around and wouldn't stop. Mrs. Tatum had held onto my phone. Let my forensics people go through that voicemail audio signatures background noise, everything they can extract. I agreed. I climbed into my old reliable Oldsmobile, and for the first time I noticed how it felt around me. Not like a refuge, like a vault. I drove home with both hands rigid on the wheel. Devlin's face kept surfacing, those manufactured tears at the funeral that clipped impatience at the cemetery just that morning. I did not sleep. I sat in my locked office staring at the phone on the desk waiting. It rang at 9 a.m. Odessa. All business. No preamble. Cornelius, that I have the preliminary file from 15 years ago. I steeled myself. My team worked through the night, she said. The official police report is thin. Very thin. What do you mean by thin? It means the case was wrapped up fast. Accidental death by fall. No toxicology report was ever ordered and no autopsy was ever requested. My gut pulled tight. No autopsy, none. Which brings me to the death certificate. It was signed by a Dr. Harlan Stroup, the county coroner at the time. Stroup, I said. The name surfaced slowly, like something dredged. A cold feeling moved through me. I hadn't thought about him in years. He retired to Texas not long after that. He did. Odessa said, her voice precise and deliberate. But that isn't the part that matters most. The part that matters is who signed as the primary witness on the police report. The only witness, Cornelius. The only person who saw anything. I already knew the answer before she said it. The name lodged in my throat. Devlin. Devlin Pruitt. She confirmed it. He'd told the police that he and Marcus had gone out for a hike. He said he moved ahead on the trail, and when Marcus never caught up, he turned back to find him. He said he found him at the bottom of the ravine. He was the one who'd come upon the body. He was the sole person present when it happened. I shut my eyes. Devlin, my living son, the only person who witnessed my other son's death. My thoughts lurched back 15 years. Back to when this house was still full of life. Back when Harriet was still with us. Marcus was 27 then. He had just earned his engineering degree from Rice University. He was my source of pride. Quiet, responsible, never one to cut corners. He was the one who mowed the lawn before anyone had to ask. He was the one who sat beside Harriet and helped her work through the bills. He was solid. He was like me. Then there was Devlin, 25. Devlin was not solid. He was charming. He was sharp-tongued and quick. He was brimming with grand ideas that dissolved before they ever became anything real. He wanted the respect Marcus had earned, but he had no interest in doing what it took to earn it. He spent his life in Marcus's shadow, and it gnawed at him. I remembered those arguments well. They always circled back to money or responsibility. Why do you always take his side, Dad? Devlin would shout, his face going red. Just because he's the golden boy. He's not the golden boy, Devlin, I'd say, working to hold my patience. He just finished his degree. You walked out after 2 semesters to sell, what was it, Vitamins Real Estate? That internet scheme. Marcus would extend a hand to him. Devlin, I can get you a position at my firm. Start in the mailroom, work your way up. It's a good outfit. I will never forget the look of pure venom Devlin aimed at him. I'm not going to be your mailboy, Marcus. I'm going to be a millionaire before you even make partner. That was 2 months before the accident. Now Odessa's words were ringing through my head. The only witness. He was not merely a witness. He was a jealous brother. He was a rival, and he was the only one standing out there. The phone rang again that afternoon. I flinched, but it was Odessa. Cornelius, she said, and her voice had changed. It had gone colder. I have my financial investigator's report. What did you find? Did you know Marcus had a life insurance policy? I frowned. A modest one. I figured something tied to his new position at the engineering firm. Maybe 20,000. 50,000, Odessa said. It hadn't come from his job. He had taken it out 6 months earlier, a plain-term life policy. He was a young, healthy man. The premiums would have been low. I didn't know, I told her. Harriet had always handled the paperwork. The sole beneficiary, Odessa continued, her voice even, was Devlin Pruitt. My breath caught. $50,000. Devlin, he'd told me. I stammered, my thoughts struggling to line up. He'd told me Marcus had some kind of work bonus or payout that came through after his death. Said he was going to use it to go back to school, wipe out his tuition balance. I remembered that conversation with painful clarity. Devlin sitting right here at my kitchen table 1 week after the funeral. His eyes were red and swollen, and I believed he was grieving. He laid his hand over mine. I'm going to make him proud, Dad, he'd said. I'm going to use this money to finally finish my degree just like Marcus always wanted. I had been so proud. I thought my surviving son was at last honoring the one I'd lost. I thought Marcus's death had finally shaken Devlin awake. Cornelius, Odessa said, drawing me back from the memory. I have the bank records from Devlin's account that month. The $50,000 check from the insurance company was deposited on a Monday. Yes. On Tuesday, he withdrew $45,000 for his tuition. I said, but a sick cold feeling was already spreading through my gut. No, Cornelius, she said, and her voice was no longer flat. There was anger underneath it now. He didn't pay a single dollar of tuition. The records show a wire transfer to an exotic car dealership in Katy. 3 weeks after you buried your son, Devlin was behind the wheel of a brand new bright red sports car. I dropped the phone. It clattered across the desk. I pressed both hands over my face. The lie. The absolute monstrous lie. It wasn't only that he'd lied about the money. He had wept false tears against my shoulder. He had turned his brother's death into a transaction. He had danced on Marcus's grave in a new Corvette. This was not jealousy anymore. This was greed. This was ice. I reached down and picked the phone back up. My hand was steady. The grief had emptied out of me. The confusion had gone with it. What remained was something cold and hard and unmovable. What do we do, Odessa? I heard her pull in a slow breath. Cornelius, the phone call from Marcus is disturbing. The fact that his line was reactivated, that is verifiable, but it could be a cruel stunt by Devlin designed to push you toward the edge to make you appear unstable. The insurance policy. The sports car, Devlin being the only witness, that is all circumstantial evidence. It's motive. It's a very powerful motive, but it is not proof of murder. Then what is proof? I asked. There is only one way to know for certain, Cornelius, and I have to warn you, it is the hardest thing I will ever ask a client to do. I waited. The line held silence. We need to know who is in that grave, she said. We need to know if Marcus is in that grave, and if he is, we need to know how he died. The police report said he died from the fall. But what if he didn't? What if something else happened before that? What are you saying? I'm saying we need to exhume the body. We need to petition the court for an exhumation and a new independent autopsy. It is the only road to the truth. My mind recoiled. To dig him up, to disturb his rest after 15 years, But what if it wasn't him in that ground? What if that voice on the phone? Do it, I said. My voice came out like gravel. Do whatever it takes. I'll file the petition immediately, she said. But Cornelius, you have to be prepared. The moment we file this motion, Devlin will be notified. He is the next of kin on record after you. He will know exactly what you are doing. He will fight this. Let him fight, I said. I'm ready. I ended the call. A clarity settled over me that I hadn't felt once all day. I had a plan. I had a path forward. Justice for Marcus. And just as I drew a breath, my phone vibrated in my hand. A text message from Marcus's number. I opened it, my heart hammering so hard it ached against my ribs. 5 words. Stop. They know you're asking. Danger. I stood in my office, the phone heavy in my grip. The screen burned with those 5 words from Marcus's number. Stop. They know you're asking. Danger. They know. How could they know I had only just spoken with Odessa Tatum? My pulse was slamming against my chest. Was Devlin tracking my calls? Was her office compromised? My own home, the place I'd sealed myself inside for safety, suddenly felt like a glass box with the walls closing in. The text was a warning. But a warning from whom? Before I could call Odessa back, the phone buzzed again, nearly jumping from my hand. I looked at the screen. Not Marcus. This time, it was Devlin. My thumb hung over the decline button. I couldn't speak to him. Not now. Not carrying the weight of what I knew. He had bought a sports car. He had been the only witness. Don't trust Devlin, but that word danger. If they already knew I was asking questions, they would move faster. If I let his call go, it would confirm their suspicions. I had to pick up. I had to play the role of the bewildered, broken father. I drew in a long breath, working to press the tremor out of my voice. I hit the green button. Devlin? Dad? His voice was nothing like the clipped, impatient tone from the cemetery. It was a choked sob, desperate, fractured. Dad, thank God. I've been calling. I was so worried. I said nothing. I let him go. Dad, I can't do this anymore. He sounded like he was coming apart at the seams. I heard him drag in a ragged breath. I have to tell you. I have to tell you the truth. I've been living a lie, Dad, for 15 years. My blood went cold. He is going to confess, right here on this phone. Was it really going to be this simple, what lied Devlin? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's about Marcus, Dad. He let out another gut-wrenching sob, a flawless performance. The kind of performance that buys you a $45,000 sports car. It wasn't an accident. What? They said the fall. It wasn't an accident. My grip tightened on the phone. Here it comes. What do you mean, Devlin? What happened? Oh God. Dad, this is going to break you, but you need to hear it from me. He paused as if summoning the nerve. Marcus, he jumped Dad. He didn't fall. He jumped. I said nothing. The world stopped turning. Jumped. He left a note. Devlin wept. I found him at the bottom of the ravine, and the note was right there beside him. He was in some kind of trouble, Dad. Money trouble. He was ashamed. He couldn't face you. He couldn't face Mom. This was new. This was a lie I had not seen coming. A lie so vicious, so precisely engineered, it nearly stole the air from my lungs. He was trying to poison my son's memory. He was trying to rewrite Marcus's entire character, turning my steady, hard-working boy into a coward who fled from his problems. A note, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You never told us about any note. I burned it, Devlin cried, his grief sounding utterly convincing. I burned it right there on the spot. I couldn't let you see it. I couldn't let that be the last thing you knew about him. And the shame, Dad, in our community. I couldn't let people say your son that he did that. So I lied. I told the police he must have slipped. I told everyone it was a terrible accident. I've been carrying this unbearable secret for 15 years just to shield you and Mom. I saw the trap. It snapped shut in my mind with perfect cold precision. This was not a confession. This was a countermove. He knew. He knew I'd been digging. He knew I had reached out to a lawyer. He knew I was casting doubt on the accident. Maybe Lacey had spotted me. Maybe they were monitoring my calls. It didn't matter. This lie was masterful. It had one purpose: to halt the exhumation. If I believed Marcus had taken his own life, I would never agree to disturb his grave. I would want to let him lie in peace. I would want to guard his secret. Devlin was handing me a new story. One just as agonizing as the accident, but one that sealed the grave shut forever. He was burying the truth 6 feet down, with a lie built out of shame, and the phone call, the call from Marcus's number. This lie would account for that too. Devlin would only need to say, "See, Dad, you're overwrought. You're imagining things. You're racked with guilt. You're hearing ghosts." He was constructing my instability case right in front of me. My fury was so cold and so pure, it felt almost like stillness. I knew exactly what I was facing. Not just a thief, not just a vulture, a monster. A cold, calculating monster who was now desecrating his brother's memory to conceal a murder. I had to play my role. I let out an unsteady breath. I pushed a sob into my own voice. Devlin, my God, why didn't you tell me? I was trying to protect you, he insisted. I still am. But now, I'm hearing you've been talking to lawyers, asking questions. Dad, please let him rest. Don't go digging all this up. Don't bring this shame down on our family. There it was, the real reason for the call. I don't know what to think, I stammered, playing the part of the shattered old man. My mind, it's all a blur. I know, Dad. I know, he said, his voice dropping, turning soft and conspiratorial. Listen, I can't talk freely here. She's upset. She doesn't understand. Can you meet me? Meet you where? Let's go to the old cabin, Marcus's place up by the lake. Just you and me like we used to. We can talk, really talk. I'll tell you everything. I need to tell you everything. Marcus's cabin, the place Marcus had built with his own hands, the place he loved. Of course, isolated, no neighbors for miles, nothing but woods in every direction. The perfect place to comfort a grieving father, the perfect place for a tragic accident or a heartbreaking suicide. Devlin, undone by his 15-year-old secret, confronts his father. The father, shattered by the revelation, has a heart attack. Or perhaps the father, consumed by grief, wanders off into the trees and doesn't come back. Or maybe the father, in his confused old age, simply disappears. I knew with the certainty of dawn that if I walked into that cabin alone, I would not walk back out. This was the trap. This was Plan B. Devlin. I whispered, my voice saturated with false, wounded trust. Yes, son. Yes, I'll come. I need to understand. Thank you, Dad, he said, the relief in his voice unmistakable. Come now. And please, Dad, don't tell anyone. This is just between us. Just for our family. Don't tell that lawyer. Don't tell a soul. Just you and me. Just you and me, son, I said. I'm on my way. I ended the call. I sat in my chair for a full minute. The trap was baited and set. He thought I was the prey. He thought I was a muddled old man strolling straight into it. He had forgotten who taught him how to set a trap in the first place. He had forgotten who I was. He thought I was walking in alone. I picked up the phone again. This time, I dialed Odessa Tatum. Odessa, I said, my voice no longer wavering. It was cold. It was hard. He's making his move. He wants me at Marcus's cabin, alone. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Cornelius, no, you can't. It's far too dangerous. I'm going, I said, but not without backup. Get your people. Get Aldrich. Get the police. Get recording equipment. He's going to try and kill me, Odessa, and we are going to catch him in the act. I set the phone down. My hand was not shaking. It was as steady as the oak outside my window. The trap was laid. He believed I was a befuddled old man, a sheep walking dutifully into his parlor of manufactured grief. He thought my mind had been swallowed by sorrow. He was wrong. It had never been sharper. The rage I carried was cold, a solid block of ice sitting where my heart used to be. He was using Marcus's memory. He was using Marcus's most cherished place, the cabin our boy had raised with his own hands, as the stage for my killing. He was going to use the fiction of his brother's suicide to mask the murder of his father. I picked up the phone once more. I did not dial 911. I dialed Odessa Tatum's private line. She answered on the second ring. Cornelius. He's making his move, I said. No tremor, just steel. He just called me. He's feeding me a new lie that Marcus took his own life 15 years ago. He's trying to stop the exhumation. He's panicking. I heard her sharp intake of breath. That is a very specific calculated lie, Cornelius. It's designed to shut you down from the inside. Where does he want you? He wants me at Marcus's cabin up by the lake. Said he needs to tell me everything. Said just you and me, Dad. He's going to kill you, Cornelius. He's going to make it look like an accident or a suicide. The grieving father who couldn't bear the truth about his son. There was a dead silence on the line. Then her voice came hard as a judge's gavel. Absolutely not. You are not going within 10 miles of that cabin. This ends now. I'm calling the Houston police. We have the text message. We have the phone reactivation. We tell them you are in immediate danger. No, I said. I said it with a firmness that surprised even me. Cornelius, do not argue with me. You are a 71-year-old man. You are not a field agent. You are a civilian, and you are the target. And I am the bait, I answered, my voice low and unyielding. Hear me out, Odessa. You call the police right now. What do we have? A threatening text. A strange phone call. He'll deny every word. He'll say I'm the one who's confused, that I'm paranoid. He'll deploy those tears of his, that grief, and he'll make me look like a raving old fool. He'll walk free. He's been walking free for 15 years. I am not letting that happen again. I took a breath. This is our moment. The only moment we're going to get. He's inviting me into a confession. He's inviting me to the scene of his next crime. He's desperate, and desperation makes a man sloppy. I am going to that cabin. Cornelius, I cannot sanction your suicide, she said, her voice rising. You're not, I said. You're sanctioning a sting. I am not going in alone. I'm going in with you. I want your best man. I want police backup hidden in those woods. I want them listening to every word spoken. I want you to wire me up, Odessa. I want my son to confess to me. I want him to confess what he did to Marcus. And I want him to confess what he is planning to do to me. We get all of it tonight, but only if I go. Only if I walk into that trap. Another long, heavy silence. I could hear her mind turning, working through the risk against the reward. She was a strategist. She knew I was right. This was the clean cut. This was the kill shot. He'll be expecting you to be broken, she said, thinking it through. He'll be expecting weak, emotional, lost. And that, I said, is exactly what he's going to get. I'll be the most convincing grief-hollowed old man he's ever seen. Right up until the moment the cuffs snapped shut. She let out a long, slow breath. God help me, Cornelius. You're crazier than he is. All right, my way. My team, my rules, my office. 1 hour. Do not be late. And do not under any circumstances speak to Devlin or Lacey again. Not one word. Am I clear? Crystal, I said, and hung up. I drove to her office. The back entrance same as before. But the mood this time was something different. The air in the room was charged. She was not alone. Standing at the window looking out over the Houston skyline was a man. He was tall, about 6 feet 3 inches, built like a linebacker. He wore a plain polo shirt and jeans, but he carried the kind of stillness you only ever see in trained hunters or seasoned soldiers. He turned as I came in. His eyes were calm, sharp, and missed nothing. Cornelius Pruitt, Odessa said. This is Aldrich. He's the best private investigator in the state of Texas. He's ex-APD, ex-Special Forces. He'll be running point on this. Aldrich walked over. He didn't smile. He gave one firm nod, his handshake solid and dry. Mr. Pruitt, Mrs. Tatum tells me you're walking into the lion's den. The lion thinks I'm a lamb, I said. That's our advantage. A flicker of something respect maybe crossed his eyes. Maybe so. Let's get you set up. He opened a compact, hard-sided black case on Odessa's conference table. It was packed with electronics. We're placing 2 devices on you, he said, his voice a low, even rumble. The first is a high-fidelity microphone and transmitter. It's live. My team, along with 2 undercover HPD officers, will be in a surveillance van parked half a mile down the access road. We will hear every word, every breath. He held up the second device. It was a small flat disc, no bigger than a quarter. This is a panic beacon, silent. It broadcasts a GPS signal directly to us. You press this, and we move in hard. We will be on that porch in 2 minutes. You press it only if he pulls a weapon, only if your life is in immediate physical danger, not because he's shouting at you. Understood, I said. Good. He placed the button in my palm. Left pocket. Keep your hand on it. He then lifted the microphone, which was fixed to a thin adhesive strip. Shirt off, Mr. Pruitt. I shrugged off my jacket and worked open my shirt buttons. The room was cool and still. He pressed the microphone flat against my chest just above the sternum. The battery pack was slim and compact. He fixed it in the small of my back, tucked beneath my belt. It felt strange against my skin, cold, foreign, a sliver of metal that didn't belong there. A secret shield. 2 more men came through the door. Plain clothes. They didn't look like detectives. They looked like weekend fishermen or men who'd just come off a job site. They gave Aldrich a quiet nod. Detectives, Odessa said. They'll be embedded with Aldrich's team. They're carrying a warrant for Devlin's arrest. It's blank pending probable cause. The moment he admits to a threat, the moment he says anything indicating he plans to harm you, that warrant activates. Aldrich finished securing the wire along my side. All right, shirt back on. I buttoned up, aware of the faint pressure beneath the fabric. He'll see it. He won't, Aldrich said. He's not looking for it. He's looking for a victim, a confused old man. That is your role tonight, Mr. Pruitt. You are not a hero. You are not an avenger. You are bait. Your job is to grieve. Your job is to appear frightened. Draw him out. Get him talking about Marcus. Get him to threaten you. The moment he does, we own him. And if he so much as raises a hand, you hit that beacon. Are we clear? I nodded. I knew he was wrong about one thing, though. I wasn't brave. I wasn't anybody's hero. I was just a father. And after 15 years of silence that had eaten me hollow, I was finally going to get justice for my boy. I was going to end this. I pulled my jacket back on and looked at Odessa. Her face held steady the mask of a professional, but her eyes told a different story. Good luck, Cornelius? I walked out of the office, the wire pressing lightly into my skin with every step. I got into my old, reliable Oldsmobile. I turned the engine over, and for the first time in 15 years, I pointed the car toward Marcus's cabin. I drove toward my son. I drove toward the truth. I rolled up the long gravel access road, the old Oldsmobile groaning and rattling over the potholes. The sun was going down, throwing long, sickly shadows through the pines. Marcus's cabin. He had loved this place. Built it with his own hands one summer, using rough-cut cedar. It was his sanctuary. And now, Devlin the brother, who had always resented him, the brother who'd cashed his life insurance policy for a sports car, was using it as a killing ground. My left hand was buried in my pocket. My fingers curled around the small, cold disc Aldrich had given me. Only if he pulls a weapon, Cornelius. Only if your life is in immediate physical danger. The wire taped to my chest felt cold against my skin. Foreign. Alien. I was 71 years old, a retired postal worker, and I was wearing a wire driving into a sting operation to catch my own son. I pulled into the clearing. Devlin's new truck sat there, expensive-looking, gleaming, even in the failing light. A single lamp burned inside the cabin. I stepped out of the car. The air was sharper up here, much colder than in the city. I crossed the clearing and approached the door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The scene inside had been arranged with care. The small cabin was bathed in the warm glow of a single lamp. Devlin was seated at the little wooden table Marcus had built. His head was buried in his hands. Lacey stood behind him, both hands on his shoulders, working slow circles, as if steadying a man about to come apart completely. She looked up when I came in. Her face was a composed mask of worn-out sympathy. "Dad," she breathed, moving toward me, her voice low and hushed. "Thank God you're here. He's been like this for hours. He won't stop." Devlin raised his head. His eyes were swollen. His face was blotchy and creased. It was a masterful performance. He looked every inch like a man demolished by guilt. "Dad." The word came out thick, strangled. I played my part, the bewildered, frightened old man. "Devlin, son, you said on the phone you needed to talk. You said it was about Marcus." Devlin made a sound that was meant to be a sob. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I've been carrying a lie for 15 years. He pushed himself up, moved to the cold fireplace, and turned back to face me, his cheeks wet with what looked like genuine tears. "Dad, what I told you about Marcus. It wasn't an accident. I lied to you. I lied to Mom. I lied to the police. I let my shoulders sag. I let my face fall apart in confusion. What are you saying, Devlin?" "He didn't fall." Devlin said the words spilling out in a rush. Oh God, Dad. He jumped. He took his own life." I stumbled backwards, selling every inch of it. I clutched my chest. No, Marcus would never. He wouldn't." "He did, Dad." Devlin said, his voice cracking apart. "He was in trouble. He owed money to people. He was so ashamed. He couldn't face you. He couldn't face Mom. When I found him, I found the note. It was right there in his coat pocket." "A note," I whispered. "I burned it," Devlin cried, pressing his face back into his hands. "I burned it right there on the spot. I couldn't let you see it. I couldn't let that be your last memory of him, and the shame, Dad, in our community. I couldn't let people say your son did that. So I lied. I told them he must have slipped. I told everyone it was a tragic accident. I've been carrying this horrible secret for 15 years, Dad, just to protect you, just to protect his name. It was a brilliant lie. I had to grant him that. It was cruel. It was revolting. It was a desecration of his brother's good name, but it was brilliant. It accounted for the secret. It painted Devlin as a tragic, selfless protector, and it handed me a powerful reason to call off Odessa Tatum and abandon her petition for an exhumation. What I was about to walk into that cabin knowing, and what it would demand of me to hold myself together long enough to see it through, I can barely describe it even now. Before I tell you what happened, when I stepped through that door. Let me ask you this. If someone you loved had been working against you in secret, would you confront them the moment you knew? Or would you wait and let them show you exactly who they are? No father would want to dig up that kind of truth. "Oh, Devlin," I said, my own voice cracking, and I was not entirely performing. The cold precision of his plan was genuinely horrifying. My son, my poor son. Lacey drifted to my side. She steered me toward a chair, her touch careful and light like a nurse settling a fragile patient. "See, Devlin," she said softly. "This secret, it's been hollowing us out. All these years of carrying it, the lies piled on top of lies. It's too much. It's why we've been so strung out. It's why Devlin has made some poor choices." I looked up, putting on the face of a confused old man. Poor choices? Lacey settled across from me, her expression a careful portrait of patient reason. "Dad," she said, in that soft, slightly condescending way. "This is where everything started to unravel. Devlin hasn't been himself since that day. He's made bad investments trying to make up for what he felt Marcus lost. He's been under enormous strain. We both have. And that house, that big silent house you're living in alone, it's a constant reminder of everything you've lost. It's an anchor around all of us, Dad. It's dragging us under." She reached into her bag and produced the same glossy folder as before, the reverse mortgage papers. She pushed them across the table. "This is the answer, Cornelius. This is how we put the burden down. This is how we all start over. You sign these. You move into that beautiful, safe apartment in Midtown. We settle the debts that this whole tragic mess has left behind. We get to breathe again. We get to heal as a family." I stared down at the papers. Then I looked at Devlin. He had stopped crying. He was watching me closely. His eyes were not the eyes of a grieving man. They were hungry. That impatient, grasping look was back the one I knew from all those years of arguments. He was waiting on me to reach for the pen. "Please, Dad," he murmured. "It's what Marcus would want. He'd want us to be free of this. He'd want you somewhere safe." I stared at the signature line. I thought about the wire pressed against my chest. I thought about Aldrich and his team half a mile down that road listening to every syllable. I thought about Marcus's voice on the phone. "Don't trust Devlin." I did not pick up the pen. I raised my head slowly. I looked at Lacey. Then I looked at my son. I let the fake-addled confusion drain completely from my face. I let my eyes go as cold as the thing sitting in my chest where my heart used to be. "You're lying, Devlin." The room changed in an instant. The air that had been thick with manufactured grief turned sharp and thin with sudden panic. Lacey's smile went rigid. Devlin's jaw went slack. "What did you say, Dad? You're confused, the shock of it all?" "No," I said. I rose to my feet slowly and deliberately. "You are lying." They both came to their feet with me, thrown off by the steadiness in my voice. "Marcus did not take his own life," I said, quiet and clear, "and he did not have an accident." I leveled my finger at Devlin's chest. "You were the only one on that mountain, son, the only witness. You cashed his $50,000 life insurance check, and you bought a brand new bright red sports car 3 weeks after you put him in the ground." Lacey's face drained of color. "How do you know that?" she gasped. "Who told you that?" Devlin lurched forward. "You've been digging that lawyer, you crazy old man. You're making things up." "He is confused," Lacey shrieked, her voice climbing high and sharp. "Devlin, he's just rambling. What is this foolish old man even talking about?" "Foolish old man," I repeated. I let out a short, dry laugh, a sound that surprised even me, and I could see it startled them too. "That's what you've been banking on, isn't it? That I'm just a poor muddled old man living on a pension, that this house is all I've got to my name." I shook my head slowly. "And this foolish old man is done pretending." They stared at me confused. The threat hadn't registered yet. They didn't understand what I'd done. So I showed them. I pulled out my own phone. I pressed number 1 on speed dial. I put it on speaker. It rang once. A crisp professional voice answered. "Tatum, Odessa." I said, my voice loud and steady in that small room. "It's Cornelius Pruitt. Are you listening? Is your team listening?" Devlin and Lacey froze. "Loud and clear, Cornelius." Odessa's voice came through the speaker. "We hear everything. What is the situation?" "The situation?" I said, fixing my eyes on my son. is that my son, Devlin Pruitt, and his wife, Lacey Pruitt, are here in this cabin with me. They have presented me with fraudulent mortgage documents, and they are attempting to pressure me into signing away my home using a fabricated story about my dead son's suicide. Devlin let out a roar of pure animal rage. You set us up, you old bastard. Lacey screamed and lunged not at me but at the phone. She knocked it out of my hand, her nails raking across my skin. It hit the far wall and shattered. The call with Odessa went dead. It didn't matter. She was too late. The other wire, the one taped to my chest, was still live. Aldrich and his team were still hearing every word. Devlin's face had gone purple. The mask was gone. The tender, heartbroken son had vanished. What stood in front of me now was the monster. "You know," he yelled. "You know everything, you stupid, stupid old man. I should have finished you 15 years ago, right after I finished Marcus." There it is, I thought. We got it, Aldrich. Lacey ran to the cabin door. She didn't try to leave. She threw the heavy iron deadbolt. The clunk of it echoed off the walls. She turned around, her face twisted into something I had never seen on her before, pure naked hatred. "He's right. You know too much. You are not walking out of here." Devlin kicked the table on its side. The papers flew everywhere. He went to his hiking pack, the one he'd mentioned for safety, and tore it open. He pulled out a coil of nylon rope. "A suicide!" He panted, his eyes wild and bloodshot. That was my first story. It's still a good one. Grieving father can't handle the truth about his son. He comes to Marcus's cabin and hangs himself from the rafters. It's poetic. I backed away slowly. My left hand was deep in my pocket, my thumb resting on the cold, flat panic button. Not yet. Not yet. Let them finish. "It's perfect, Devlin," Lacey said, her voice giddy with the edge of panic. "No one will question it. That nosy lawyer will just think she pushed him too hard. It'll land on her." Devlin finished uncoiling the rope. He was working a loop into one end, a noose tied with practiced hands. "You should have just signed the papers, old man," he spat. "You should have moved into that apartment and let it go, but you had to go digging. You couldn't let him rest." I looked at the loop forming in his grip. I looked at the hate burning in his eyes. The team was listening. They had heard the threat. They had heard him confess to what he did to Marcus. I had everything I needed. Devlin took his first step toward me, rope in hand. The loop was clean, expertly drawn, a hangman's knot. Where had my son, the man who supposedly sold insurance, learned to tie a knot like that? He held it up and let it turn slowly in the warm glow of the lamp. "You should have just signed the papers, old man." His face had moved past anger into something worse, something bright and eager. His breath was coming fast, shallow. He was enjoying this. "You had to dig," he said, closing another step. The floorboard groaned beneath him. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you?" "Devlin, don't do something you can't walk back from," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't care. My left hand was locked around the cold quarter-size button in my pocket. "Not yet. Not yet, Aldrich. Let him finish. I needed every word. I needed it for Marcus." "Stupid!" Lacey shrieked from the door. She'd thrown the deadbolt. I heard its solid final. "He's not the stupid one you are. You thought you could trap us with that lawyer. You're the one who's caught." Devlin was only a few feet away now. I could smell the sweat on him, sour and sharp, the smell of fear and fury running together. "It's poetic, really," he said, his voice dropping almost to a murmur. "Grieving father can't handle the truth about his son." He glanced upward, his eyes tracking the heavy wooden beam above my head. He comes to Marcus's cabin and hangs himself from the rafters. It's clean. It's tragic. My back met the rough-hewn wall of the cabin. There was nowhere left to go. "Devlin, please," I said. This part was not a performance. "He was your brother. I am your father. Marcus was a fool." He roared, his face flooding purple with a rage that had been building for 15 years. "And you were always his father, never mine. You gave him everything. You loved him more. I gave you everything I had. You gave me nothing." He screamed, just a life lived in his shadow. "Well, I'm out of the shadow now, old man." He raised the rope. He was lunging. This was it. He was wrenching the noose wide with both hands. My thumb drove down on the panic button. Now, Aldrich. Now, now, now. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact, for the rope for the end. But the sound that followed was not Devlin's voice. It was the crack of splitting wood. A deafening, explosive crash that rattled the whole cabin to its bones. Not a gunshot. An impact. The heavy oak door Marcus had hung the door Lacey had thrown the deadbolt on it shuddered in its frame. Devlin stopped. He froze the rope, still raised his head, snapping toward the entrance. Lacey let out a shriek so high and sharp it barely sounded human. "What was that?" she screamed. "Devlin!" Another crack louder. The iron deadbolt shot clean out of the door casing and skittered across the floor like a stone. A third blow, heavy, decisive, and the entire door tore from its hinges and crashed inward, throwing up a cloud of dust from the rafters. And in the open doorway stood a man. Not Aldrich. Not one of the undercover officers. A stranger. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, built solid as a load-bearing wall. He wore dark mud-caked jeans and a worn flannel jacket. The dim glow of the lamp caught the side of his face. His beard was thick and unkempt, and a scar, a vicious, jagged white scar, ran from his left temple all the way down to his jawline, dragging the corner of his eye into a permanent pull. He just stood there breathing hard, framed against the black of the woods behind him. Lacey shrank back from the doorway, both hands pressed over her mouth, her eyes stretched wide with terror. "Who are you?" she shrieked. "Who the hell are you? Get out! Get out!" Devlin had gone completely still. He lowered the rope slowly, his eyes fixed on the stranger with an expression I couldn't name. It wasn't only fear, there was something beneath it. Recognition. "You," Devlin whispered, barely audible. "It can't be." The stranger moved one step into the cabin. The floorboards groaned under his weight. He looked past me. He looked past Lacey. His eyes found Devlin and stayed there. And then he spoke. His voice was a low, raw rasp. A voice that had not been used much in a long time. A voice like gravel and old pain. "It's been 15 years, little brother. Little brother." Those 2 words hit me harder than Devlin's rope ever could have. My blood went to ice water. My knees buckled. I slid down the rough-hewn wall with my hand pressed to my chest. No, no, no. This was grief. This was the madness finally arriving. My mind giving way under the weight. This had to be a dream. It could not be anything else. I looked at the man. The height was right. The build was right. And the voice beneath all that gravel, beneath that damage, I knew it. I knew the way he said the word brother. I looked into his eyes. They were Marcus's eyes. But the face was a ruin. The scar was terrible. A jagged map of suffering that pulled his eye down and locked his mouth into a grim, permanent line. This was not the smooth-faced, laughing young man I had buried. This was someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side barely recognizable. Devlin dropped the rope. It fell to the floor and lay there in a dead coil. He looked like a man who had just seen something that could not exist. And maybe he had. "No," Devlin stammered, staggering backward, both hands rising. "No, you're dead. You're dead. I buried you. I saw you. I buried you." Lacey was completely unraveling, pressed into the far corner by the cold fireplace. "Devlin, what is he talking about?" she screamed. Who is this? Who is this man?" The stranger took another step forward, deeper into the lamplight. His boots were thick with mud. "You didn't bury me, Devlin," the man rasped. "You buried an empty suit, or maybe you buried someone else, but you didn't bury me." "It's a lie!" Devlin screamed, but his voice had gone thin with terror. "You're a fake. You're somebody he hired. That's all. That old man paid you to be here." The man ignored him completely. He turned his scarred face toward me. His eyes, Marcus's eyes, finally met mine. The hardness in them eased just for a fraction of a second. And in that fraction I saw the boy who used to crouch beside me on a Saturday morning and help me fix the porch. "Marcus," I whispered. The word was torn from somewhere deep. It felt like broken glass. It felt like a prayer. "My boy." He turned his head fully toward me. "Dad!" he rasped. "I'm sorry I'm late." It was him. It was Marcus. Alive. Devlin stood frozen mouth, hanging open, the rope slack in his hand. He stared at the scarred man in the ruined doorway as though looking at something the laws of nature would not permit. He scrambled backward, catching his heel on the overturned chair, his eyes wild with the kind of primal terror I had never once seen in him. "No!" he whispered, his voice shattering. "No, no, no, you are dead." He stabbed a shaking finger toward the man. "You are dead. I buried you. I stood right there. I watched them lower the casket. I buried you." Lacey had flattened herself against the back wall beside the cold fireplace. She had snatched up the iron poker knuckles bone white around it. "Devlin!" Her voice was a thin, tearing sound. "Devlin, who is this? Tell me what he's saying. This is a trick. It's one of the old man's tricks." The scarred man took another step into the light. The lamp caught the ruined side of his face full on. He gave Lacey not a glance. His gaze never moved from my son. "You buried someone, Devlin." He rasped his voice like gravel and pine needles. "You just didn't bury me." "It was an accident," Devlin screamed, pressing himself back against the wall. I tried to grab you. You slipped. I told everyone it was an accident." "You called me the golden boy," the man said. The words came out flat and dead, each one an accusation laid down like a stone. "You screamed that I always got everything, that I was Mom and Dad's favorite, and then you put both hands on my chest, and you pushed. I remember it. I remember your face, Devlin. I remember you looking down at me as I fell. My mind already reeling, shattered. I was on the floor back against the wall, and I could not feel my legs. Marcus alive, and Devlin a murderer. Not an act of passion, a cold-blooded, hatred-driven thing, but how I finally forced the word out. It was barely a sound. The whisper of a 71-year-old man whose entire life had just been unmade and rebuilt as a lie in the space of a few seconds. "Son, how? 15 years. We thought you were gone." The man's scarred face turned to me at last. The murderous intensity he had locked on Devlin softened, only for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. I saw the boy I had raised. "I was dead," Marcus rasped. "I was gone." He told us the story then. He told it while Lacey cowered beside the fireplace, and Devlin panted against the wall like a trapped animal. He told us he hadn't died in the fall. The rocks had torn his face open, that was the scar. They had shattered his leg, cracked 3 ribs, and he had struck his head so violently that his memory had been wiped completely clean. When he came to, days had passed. He wasn't at the bottom of the ravine. He was inside a rough primitive cabin, lying on a straw mattress with an old man spooning broth into his mouth. "His name was Clem," Marcus said, his voice raw. "A Vietnam vet, a hermit, lived off-grid miles from anyone. He was checking his trap lines when he found me. He said I was more dead than alive. He set my leg himself. He stitched my face together with suture thread he'd kept from his army kit. He saved my life." He stopped. The weight of that memory was visible in his face. "But he couldn't save this." Marcus pressed 2 fingers against his scarred temple. "I didn't know who I was, Dad. I didn't know your name. I didn't know my own. For 15 years I was just River. That's what he called me, because that's where he found me. I lived up there with him. Learned to hunt, learned to fish, helped him with what he needed. The world you, Mom, it was all just a black hole, a total empty blank." I pressed my hand over my mouth. Harriet. She had died not knowing. She had died of cancer, grieving a son who had been alive only miles away in those same woods. The cruelty of it had no bottom. "Clem died last winter," Marcus went on. "Old age, he left me his cabin, his truck. It was the first time I had been truly alone in 15 years. I started going into town for supplies, seeing people, hearing voices, but nothing came back. I was just a man with a ruined face and no history. Then 6 months ago, I was in a hardware store in Sugarland, and I heard a man laughing, a loud braying laugh. I knew that laugh. I had heard it at my own dinner table for 40 years. Devlin's laugh. It was him, Marcus said, his eyes snapping back to Devlin. He was talking to Lacey, going on about some deal he was wrapping up. He looked comfortable, polished. He was griping about the price of lumber, and the moment I saw his face, it was like a floodgate burst open inside my skull. 15 years? Dad. 15 years came crashing back all at once. The ravine, the struggle, his hands on my chest, him staring down at me. Not with fear, not with panic, with satisfaction. I remembered every second of it. I didn't confront him, Marcus said, his voice falling low. I followed him. I tracked him for months. I watched him come to your house, Dad. I watched him deliver those papers. I saw him push you around. I saw him treating you the same way he used to treat me, like something in his path, like an obstacle to be moved. I needed proof. I had to understand what he was up to. 2 weeks ago, I broke into his garage. Not the house, the garage. He's got a big metal safe in there. I figured that's where he kept his money. I got it open. Marcus paused, his scarred face twisting with disgust. But there was barely any money, Dad. The thing was packed with trophies. Old report cards of mine, all A's. Your Father of the Year plaque from the post office. And this. Marcus reached into the pocket of his flannel jacket and pulled it out. My breath seized in my throat. It was the old silver Nokia phone. My phone. The phone I was certain I'd placed in his casket. He didn't bury it, Marcus said, his voice thick with a fury that mirrored my own. He kept it. He held onto it in that safe for 15 years like a souvenir, a trophy from the day he finally won. But the casket, I whispered. My mind was clawing for footing, scrambling to assemble the pieces. Devlin, the funeral, I was there. The casket was closed, but it was heavy. Who did we bury Devlin? Devlin was pressed against the wall, shaking his head, his face a pale, sweat-drenched mask of terror. No, no, no. He knows, Marcus said, stepping toward his brother. Don't you, Devlin? You paid off Dr. Stroup at the funeral home. I found the bank transfer buried in your old files. $10,000 for special services. Marcus looked back at me, and the sadness in his eyes broke my heart all over again. Dad, Dr. Stroup was the county coroner. He had access to the morgue. John does. Homeless people with no family. He let the truth hang there in the silence. Devlin hadn't buried Marcus. He'd purchased an anonymous body, dressed it in Marcus's suit, and staged a closed casket funeral. We didn't bury Marcus Pruitt. We buried a stranger. For 15 years we had been standing at the grave of a man none of us ever knew. The weight of it was suffocating. Lacey, still in the corner, finally put it all together. She stared at Devlin, her eyes wide with a new and different kind of horror. You murdered him, she whispered. You told me it was an accident. You lied to me. That was what finally broke him. Not my grief, not Marcus's return, but his wife's accusation. Devlin snapped. The fear vanished from his eyes, replaced by the pure cornered animal rage I had witnessed 15 years before. He didn't look at Lacey. He didn't look at me. He let out a low guttural roar and threw himself at Marcus. This time, I'll finish the job. I'll kill you for real. He drove into Marcus hard. They crashed into the small wooden table, splintering its legs beneath them. Marcus was bigger, toughened by years of living rough. But Devlin was running on pure, desperate hatred. They hit the floor together, rolling, throwing punches. Lacey watching her entire world. Her money, her future dissolve before her, made her choice. She didn't run. She didn't shrink back. She snatched the heavy iron fireplace poker. She raised it high above her head, her face contorted in ugly open rage. "Kill him, Devlin!" she screamed. "Kill them both! We'll burn the cabin down." I saw her angling toward Marcus's back. He was on top of Devlin, fighting to pin his arms down. I was on the floor, unable to stand. I did the only thing left to me. I shouted, "No!" and hurled myself forward, locking both hands around her ankle. I didn't have the strength to stop her, but I had just enough to throw her off balance. She shrieked, lurching sideways, the poker swinging wild, crashing against the wall. And in that exact instant, the cabin windows exploded inward. The reinforced front door, the one Marcus had kicked in, was suddenly filled with men in black. "HPD, get down! Hands on your head! Now!" It was Aldrich. He was first through the door. Behind him came the two undercover detectives. Flashlights swept the room. Red and blue lights pulsed through the shattered windows, painting the trees outside in flashes of blood and water. Aldrich was on Devlin in a heartbeat knee in his back, wrenching his arms behind him. The click of the handcuffs was the sharpest sound in the room. "Devlin Pruitt!" Aldrich's voice boomed. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Cornelius Pruitt." One of the other officers hauled Lacey up off the floor, kicking and screaming. "Lacey Pruitt, you are under arrest for conspiracy and attempted assault with a deadly weapon." Devlin was screaming into the dusty floorboards. "You can't do this. You have no proof. It's his word against mine." "It's a family dispute. You've got nothing." Aldrich reached down toward my chest. He tore my shirt open buttons scattering across the floor. He peeled the small, flattened microphone from the tape on my skin. He held it up, the tiny green light still blinking. "We have more than his word, Devlin," Aldrich said, his voice flat and cold. "We have yours." He turned and looked at Marcus, who was leaning against the wall, breathing hard blood running from a cut above his brow. "And I'm guessing," Aldrich said with a nod toward Marcus, "we have a whole lot more." I looked at Marcus, my son, alive. It was over. It was finally over. The cabin churned with flashing blue and red light. I watched them drag Devlin out through the trees, hands cuffed behind his back. He wasn't yelling anymore. He wasn't fighting. He was simply limp spent. He caught my eye for just a moment as the paramedics were easing me onto a stretcher. He didn't look angry. He looked stunned, like a chess player who'd just been beaten by a piece he never even knew was in play. Lacey was a different story. She was screaming, spitting, cursing my name, cursing Marcus's name. She cursed the police. She cursed the woods. They put them in separate cars. Marcus sat with me in the back of the ambulance, his scarred face lit by the pulsing lights outside. He'd refused his own stretcher. He just settled in beside me, didn't say much. He simply held my hand the same way Harriet used to. My son was alive. But my other son was gone. In that ambulance rattling down the gravel road away from that cabin of nightmares, I knew the fight wasn't finished. It had only shifted ground out of the dark woods and into a different kind of jungle, the courtroom, and Odessa Tatum was already moving. The next 72 hours ran together in a blur of hospitals, police stations, and legal offices. Odessa Tatum moved like a force of nature. She didn't just walk into a room. She took possession of it. "Cornelius," she said, sitting at the edge of my hospital bed the next morning, her voice precise and clear. "Aldrich's recording is perfect, clean, undeniable confession. We have Devlin's own words. I should have finished you right after I finished Marcus. That is murder one. We have Lacey's voice. Kill them both. We'll burn the cabin down. That is conspiracy to commit murder. They are not walking away from this." Marcus was in the room next to mine, giving his own formal statement to the detectives. I could hear the low, rough rasp of his voice filtering through the wall. He told them everything. The fight on the mountain, the shove the years lost in the wilderness, the memories returning, finding the phone locked in Devlin's safe. He was the living, breathing proof that cracked the whole case wide open. "But it's not enough," Odessa said, her sharp eyes fixed on me. "A sharp defense lawyer, and with $15 million on the line one will work to discredit Marcus. They'll call him unstable. They'll claim he's an imposter, that he's the one chasing your money. We need the final piece. We need to establish what happened at that funeral home 15 years ago." "Dr. Stroup?" I said. The name sat in my mouth like something rotten. "The man who signed the death certificate, Clem Stroup." Odessa nodded. "He retired to Corpus Christi, Texas a decade ago. Aldrich is already on a plane. We need to get to him before Devlin's lawyers do. We need to break him." Aldrich found him in a small, sad-looking condo inside a gated community. He was 85 years old, frail and terrified. Aldrich and Odessa didn't go in hard. They went in smart. No police, just a tape recorder. Aldrich told me about it afterward. He said Odessa simply laid the evidence out across the old man's dining room table. "We know about the $10,000 transfer, Dr. Stroup." Her voice was steady, unhurried. "We know Devlin Pruitt paid you. We know the body in that grave is not Marcus Pruitt. We are digging it up with or without your cooperation. A new autopsy will establish that he shares no blood with Cornelius Pruitt, and we will identify that John Doe. When we do that, is desecration of a corpse. That is fraud. That is accessory to murder. You can speak to us right now, or you can answer to the prosecuting attorney." Aldrich said the old man just fell apart. He broke down weeping and confessed everything. He said Devlin had come to him frantic, claiming Marcus had run up a catastrophic gambling debt in secret. He told Dr. Stroup that Marcus dying in an accident was the only way to save the family home from loan sharks. Devlin had offered him $10,000 to sign the death certificate, no questions asked, and to arrange a replacement. Dr. Stroup, carrying gambling debts of his own, said yes. He took the body of a homeless man, died of exposure, pulled from the county morgue, no name, no family, and dressed him in Marcus's expensive suit. Dr. Stroup signed a full witnessed confession. The final piece was in place. The district attorney didn't hesitate. The charges against Devlin and Lacey were staggering. For Devlin murder in the first degree, for the premeditated killing of Marcus Pruitt, attempted murder in the first degree for the planned execution of Cornelius Pruitt, conspiracy to commit murder insurance, fraud, desecration of a corpse, and attempting to file fraudulent legal documents, the reverse mortgage. For Lacey, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder in the first degree, wire fraud, and desecration of a corpse. She was every bit as culpable. She had known. She had helped him plan it. Dr. Stroup was arrested in Texas and extradited. His charges were desecration of a corpse, obstruction of justice, and felony fraud. The trial was the longest 6 weeks of my life. I sat in the front row every single day. Marcus sat beside me. His presence in that courtroom was the most powerful testimony imaginable. He was the ghost who had returned to point the finger, tall, scarred, and still. He just fixed his gaze on his brother. Lacey's lawyers tried to cut a deal. They worked to throw Devlin under the bus entirely. They painted her as a battered wife, a victim herself, dragged into a scheme by a monstrous husband. She had no knowledge of Marcus's murder, her lawyer insisted. She was only involved in the financial arrangement. She believed her husband's father was a threat to everything they'd built, but Odessa Tatum was ready. She played the cabin recording. Lacey's voice, high, shrill, stripped of everything, filled that silent courtroom. "Kill him, Devlin! Kill them both! We'll burn the cabin down." The jury just stared at her. The battered wife defense dissolved in that single hateful shriek. Then it was Devlin's turn. His lawyer, a flashy man in an expensive suit, tried to make me the villain. He argued I was a cold, remote father, a man worth $15 million who watched his son Devlin drown in debt without lifting a hand, all while showering his golden boy Marcus with favor. He claimed Devlin buckled under the psychological weight of my emotional and financial neglect. He said this wasn't murder. It was a crime of passion, 15 years in the making. Then the prosecutor, a sharp young woman working alongside Odessa, rose for the cross-examination. "A crime of passion, Mr. Pruitt." She asked, her voice quiet. "You bought a $45,000 sports car with your brother's life insurance. Was that passion or was that a payday?" Devlin just stared. "And the call you made to your father," she went on, telling him Marcus had taken his own life, "was that passion? Or was that a calculated lie designed to keep him from digging up what you'd buried?" Devlin's face went red. I was grieving. I was confused." "You didn't sound confused," the prosecutor said. "You sounded like a man setting a trap you confirmed when you tied a noose in that cabin." Finally, they played Aldrich's recording. The entire courtroom heard it, my voice old and frightened. "Devlin, please. I'm your father." And then Devlin's roar. "You know too much. I should have finished you 15 years ago, right after I finished Marcus." It was over. I knew it was over. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When we came back, the courtroom was packed. The air pressed down like something solid. I could hear my own heartbeat. The court officer's voice rang out. "On the charge of murder in the first degree for the death of Marcus Pruitt, how do you find be guilty?" Marcus's hand found mine. His grip was iron. "On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree for Cornelius Pruitt, how do you find guilty? On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find guilty?" One by one, they read through the counts. Fraud, desecration of a corpse, guilty, guilty, guilty. Lacey collapsed, wailing a loud, ugly animal sound. The bailiffs dragged her from her chair. Devlin just sat there completely hollow. He turned his head once and looked at me. No hate, no anger, just a vacant, bottomless emptiness. The look of a man who had wagered his entire soul and come up with nothing. The judge did not linger. His face was carved from stone. "You are the very definition of malice. You killed your own brother out of jealousy and $50,000. You buried a stranger in his place and forced your father to mourn over a misidentified grave for 15 years. And when that father grew inconvenient in his old age, you plotted to bury him too." He looked at Devlin. "You are a cancer on your own family." He turned to Lacey. "And you are the rot that fed it. For the murder of Marcus Pruitt, I sentence you, Devlin Pruitt, to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the attempted murder of Cornelius Pruitt, I sentence you to an additional 30 years. For the conspiracy and fraud charges, I sentence you, Lacey Pruitt, to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Justice. It was a cold, bitter, and necessary word. It didn't bring Harriet back. It didn't erase the scars from Marcus's face or restore the 15 years that had been stripped from his life. It didn't make Devlin the son I had always hoped he might become. But it was justice. As they led them away, Marcus stood up. He didn't say a word. He just watched his brother, the man who had stolen his life, disappear in handcuffs. The fight was finally over. We drove back from the courthouse in my old, reliable Oldsmobile. The car seemed to sense that it was done. The engine running quietly, no rattles for the first time in years. Marcus rode in the passenger seat silent. He had been silent through most of the trial. A living ghost in that courtroom, his scarred face a constant and damning piece of evidence. He watched them sentence Devlin to life. He watched them sentence Lacey to life. He didn't cheer. He didn't cry. He just watched. I pulled into the driveway, the same driveway Devlin had tried to steal from me. I looked at the house. My house. The one I had built a life in with Harriet. It was just a house again. The cloud that had been pressing down on it for a year, the cloud of Devlin's greed, it was gone. I switched off the engine. The silence inside the car sat heavy. It wasn't the easy, comfortable silence I used to share with Harriet. This was the silence of two men who were family and strangers at the same time. Two men who had just survived a war waged by their own blood. "Well," I said, my voice rough. "That's done." Marcus just nodded. He looked at the house. "It's smaller than I remember," he rasped. His voice had been permanently roughened by the fall, or maybe by 15 years of near silence. "We got older, son," I said. Or I did. The world shrinks when you're alone. We climbed out. I fumbled with my keys at the front door. My hands were unsteady. All the adrenaline, the weeks of grinding tension, it was draining out of me. And what it left behind was the bone-deep exhaustion of a 71-year-old man. Marcus, seeing me struggle gently, took the keys from my hand. He unlocked the door. He went in first. I followed him into the living room. He stood in the middle of the rug, turning, slowly taking it all in. His eyes moved across the walls, the old sofa, the fireplace I had built. They settled on the mantelpiece, on the picture of Harriet. He crossed the room to it. He reached out one of his large, roughened hands, the hands of a man who had lived in the wilderness, and his fingers carefully brushed the glass. She would have been happy to see you," I whispered. "She never stopped talking about you, Marcus. Not one day. She died believing you were gone." "I know," he rasped. He didn't turn around. His shoulders were broad, but I could see them shaking just once. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry I wasn't here for her. For you. It wasn't your fault, son. It wasn't yours either." What do you say after something like that? What words exist that are big enough? I did what I've always done when the weight of the world gets too heavy. I made coffee. I went into the kitchen and measured out the grounds the same way I had every morning for 45 years. I heard him follow me. He settled into the small kitchen table, the same table where Devlin and Lacey had sat, mapping out how to put me in a home. The same table where Marcus used to spread out his homework. I poured 2 mugs, black, no sugar, just the way he used to take it. I wondered if that had changed. I sat down across from him. He lifted the mug with his scarred hands, blew across the steam, and drank. His eyes shut for just a moment. "Tastes exactly like I remember," he said. We sat without speaking for a few minutes, just the old refrigerator humming in the corner. I looked at my son who had passed through hell and found his way back. A man who had lost his name, his face, his family, and returned anyway. He had sat at my side, a quiet, steady force as we faced down the monster Devlin had become. He had done all of it, and he had asked for nothing. I had one secret left, my last unspoken truth. It wasn't a lie like Devlin's. Not black, not rotten. It was a lie of shelter, something I had held back from Marcus and Devlin, and the whole world for my entire life. But sitting across from the man Marcus had grown into, I understood that secret had no place left between us. If we were going to rebuild anything, we had to build it on solid ground. No more secrets. "Marcus," I said. My voice was quiet. He looked up, his eyes steady. "There's one more thing. One more secret I've been keeping. I kept it from you, and I kept it from Devlin. I never even told Harriet, not the whole truth." And he waited. He was a patient man. 15 years in the wilderness will do that to a person. "You and Devlin," I began, "you grew up in this house. You wore second-hand clothes sometimes. You watched me drive that old Buick. You thought I was nothing more than a postal worker. You thought your mother was just a nurse. You thought we were simple." Marcus frowned. "We were happy, Dad. I know." I stopped him gently. "I know you didn't care. That's why I can tell you this now. Your brother Devlin, he hated it. He despised the simplicity. He was ashamed that I was just a mailman. He thought this house, this $500,000 house, was the sum total of everything I owned. He was willing to kill his own father for $500,000. I leaned forward. "He was a fool, Marcus. A blind, stupid fool. He was evil, Dad. Marcus said, his voice flat. He was, I agreed. But he was also wrong. Wrong about me. About everything we had. I drew a slow breath. Your mother was a genius, Marcus. She wasn't just a nurse. She was an investor. She looked at this city back in the 80s when everyone else was fleeing it. She saw what it was going to become. We lived on my salary. We invested hers, every single dime. Marcus was listening hard now, his brow pulled together, not yet seeing where this road led. We bought land. We bought small commercial buildings. We bought duplexes in neighborhoods people were afraid to touch. We used holding companies, LLCs. We found a very sharp, very discreet advisor in Zurich. I let that settle in the air. Dad, Marcus said slowly, what exactly are you telling me? I'm telling you that Devlin was plotting my murder to get his hands on a $500,000 house. I leaned back in my chair, when in fact, I am worth $15 million. The number just rested there in the quiet kitchen. 15 million. Marcus stared at me. He didn't gasp. He didn't look excited or greedy or angry. He just stared. His eyes, Marcus's eyes, were working to absorb it. Finally, he set his coffee mug down on the table with a soft click. He shook his head slowly, not in disbelief, but in a deep and bitter irony. 15 million, he rasped. He looked down at his own scarred hands, the hands of a man who had trapped his own food to survive. He let out a short, hard laugh. It carried nothing but pain. And all he wanted was the house. All of that. All of this for a house. He looked back up at me. His eyes were clear. There was no greed in them, only a profound and terrible sadness. Dad, he said softly, I don't care about the money. I don't. I spent 15 years in a cabin with no floor. I learned to live on whatever the woods provided. I don't need any of it. He reached across the table, his rough hand covering mine. His skin was warm. Real. I just needed my family back, he whispered. I came back for you. Not for any of that. I felt the last frozen thing inside my chest give way. I turned my hand over and held his. My son, my true son, the one who had always understood. Always. I know, I said, my voice thick. I know you don't want it. That's why I can finally tell you. That's why it was always meant for you, not Devlin. He would have destroyed himself with it. He proved that. I squeezed his hand. But I'm not keeping this money quiet any longer, Marcus. I'm not going to let it sit in Switzerland collecting dust. I'm done hiding what I am. Not anymore. Marcus frowned. What do you mean, Dad? I mean that man, Dr. Stroup, the funeral director. He sold his soul for $10,000. He desecrated a grave and let a mother and father mourn a stranger for 15 years. All for $10,000. Devlin murdered you for $50,000 in a car. Lacey was ready to kill me for this house. I pushed back my chair and stood something rising back into my body. This entire nightmare, this 15-year hell, it happened because of money, because of greed, because they believed I was old and poor and weak and alone. I'm not going to be the last one, Marcus. Dad, I'm not letting this money stay buried, I said, and my voice had an edge I hadn't heard in years. I'm going to put it to use. I'm going to turn it into something. A weapon for good. I'm going to find every Dr. Stroup out there. I'm going to find every family doing to their parents what Devlin tried to do to me. I'm going to use this money to hunt them down. Devlin thought I was a burden. He's about to learn I'm a reckoning. I did not sell the house. I couldn't. It was the last living piece of Harriet. It was the only home Marcus had ever truly known. Instead, I called my bankers in Zurich. I told them that after 40 years of silence, it was time to bring the money home. And I didn't just bring it home. I put it to work. 6 months after the trial, I stood on a small stage in the downtown Houston. Marcus was beside me, tall, scarred, in a suit for the first time in 15 years. Odessa Tatum was on my other side. Aldrich was in the front row. Cameras, reporters, people from across the city. I looked at the banner hanging behind me. It was the first time I had seen it displayed publicly. It read, "The Harriet and Marcus Pruitt Foundation." I stepped up to the microphone, my hands steady. My name is Cornelius Pruitt. I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying through the hushed room. For 40 years, I was a postal worker. My son Devlin and his wife Lacey believed I was a poor, senile old man. They thought I was a burden. They tried to take my $500,000 home. To do it, they were prepared to have me committed to a nursing home to forge legal documents and to let me die. I paused. What they didn't know is that I am worth $15 million. Their greed, their impatience, their cruelty, it was all for nothing. They burned down their lives and tore apart my family for pocket change. A murmur moved through the crowd. My family's story is a tragedy, I went on. But it will not be a waste. Today I am officially launching the Harriet and Marcus Pruitt Foundation. This is not a charity. It is a weapon. We will direct every dollar of my $15 million toward one purpose: to find, to expose and to prosecute every person who preys on the elderly. Every Devlin, every Lacey, every Dr. Stroup. I gestured toward Odessa Tatum. My friend and attorney, Mrs. Tatum, will serve as the foundation's chief counsel. I gestured toward Aldrich. Mr. Aldrich, the man who helped me gather the evidence, will lead our investigations unit. We will hunt them down. We will fund exhumations. We will retain private investigators for families who cannot afford them. We will bring in forensic accountants. We will push for new laws. I looked directly into the camera. So, to every son, every daughter, every grandchild who looks at their parents and sees nothing but a bank account, know this. We are watching. And we are coming for you. That was 6 months ago. Today the foundation is up and running. Odessa and Aldrich are building cases across the state. And me, I am sitting on my porch. It is a warm Sunday afternoon. The air carries the smell of fresh-cut grass. I am 71 years old. I am in my own home. I am not alone. In the rocking chair across from me sits Marcus. He is 42 years old. The scar on his face has softened some, but it will always be there, a mark of the life that was taken from him. He is quiet. He is still finding his footing in this new world, this loud and relentless world. But he is home. He is telling me a story, not about the nightmare, about the still years, about Clem, the old veteran who pulled him back from the edge, about learning to read the movements of a deer, about the first fish he ever took with his bare hands. He is filling in 15 years of silence, one small story at a time. I refill his glass of sweet tea. He takes it. He gazes out at the yard he used to mow as a boy. He looks at ease. Those ghosts that haunted his eyes when he first walked back through the door, they are finally beginning to settle. He takes a slow sip and turns to look at me. He smiles, that same quiet, familiar smile. The scar along his cheek pulls with it, but it can't touch the gentleness in his eyes. "You know, Dad," he says, still in that low rasp. "I'm sorry it took me so long to call," I smile back. "It's all right, son. I figured you were tied up." He chuckles. "I was." He taps the side of his new smartphone sitting on the table between us. "And besides, I just didn't have much of a chance. The battery was low." I laugh. A real one, deep and full, rising up from somewhere I'd almost forgotten. The first laugh like that in years. Marcus laughs with me. The sound of it drifts out over the quiet neighborhood. For the first time in 15 years, I am not a grieving father. I am not a target. So, that is where we are. Two men on a porch, a glass of sweet tea and laughter that took 15 years to come back. I am 71 years old, and I am still here. This road cost everything. It cost me years of grief over a grave that held a stranger. It cost Marcus his face, his name, and the prime years of his life. It cost Harriet the chance to see her son walk back through that door. I believe God kept Marcus breathing in those woods for a reason, and I believe the reason was not just to save him, but to bring all of this into the light. The Lord's timing is not our timing, but it does not miss. If you are walking away from this story with anything, let it be this. First, never assume the people closest to you see your value the way you do. Protect what you have built and know who you have built it with. Second, if something feels wrong about the way a family member is treating you, trust that feeling. Greed does not always announce itself loudly. Third, a patient man with the truth on his side will outlast a clever man with a secret every single time. Fourth, when the people you love are gone, the best way to honor them is to refuse to let what they helped you build be stolen or wasted. For every person over 50 who has ever felt invisible or been made to feel like a burden, this is a family revenge story for you. You are not a burden. You are not finished. And there are people in this world and on this channel who are paying attention. If this story moved, you share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me what stayed with you. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Honor Revenge Stories. I will be right here. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I mean that sincerely. Now go call someone you love. I will see you in the next one.